forward. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening for this program on Phoenix's shade plan called Shade Phoenix Plan and Tree and Shade Grants. We're pleased to have David Hondula with the City of Phoenix with us to talk to us a little bit about the plan, but just wanted to let folks know this is a presentation on the plan, but this is a draft plan or a draft. They're updating the plan, and this is a draft, and so there is opportunity to comment, ask questions, and make sure that you have input in this important plan. So. Without further ado, go ahead and take it away, David, and thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Well, thanks so much, Sandy, and I'll just confirm you can hear me okay, and we've got the screen sharing perfect. Yeah, seeing some
Yes.
nods. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And yeah, really would love to put an exclamation mark on Sandy's invitation to provide input, provide critiques. We're very hopeful this will be a good conversation tonight. We'll talk about this a little as the presentation goes along, but we know there's a long and tumultuous history on these topics in the city, a history that we are hoping to learn from and move forward from in a positive direction. I'll give a brief shout out to my teammate, Laura Martins, who is on with us as well. Laura is the city's urban tree program manager, the first person to hold that title at the city, and has been one of the lead masterminds behind this this document, along with our other colleague, Mary Wright, who, if Laura is working on trying to cool the city and Phoenicians through trees, Mary's thinking about all the other strategies that could be used to create more comfortable spaces indoors and out. We have some slides prepared about the draft plan, and then a few slides at the end about some of our tree and shade grant programs, some of which are open, remain open right now, and we're hopeful that we can persuade you or others to consider applying for them. Thanks again for the opportunity to be here. As I'm sure you all appreciate on Zoom, you all are very tiny thumbnails right now on the screen. So if there is a question or interruption, we absolutely welcome it. Please just jump in. If you're politely raising your hand or your virtual hand, I may not see it, so please don't be shy to jump in. And Laura, thanks for helping keep our eyes open as well. So it's been 10 years since the city produced and voted on its Tree and Shade Master Plan. 14 years, the 2010 Tree and Shade Master Plan. And obviously a very different time then and now for all sorts of reasons. That 2010 document said it was supposed to be updated every other year. And here we are 14 years later without an update. So we think it should be updated. And this has in fact been a priority communicated to us since the City Heat Office was created just a couple of years ago. But we also know that plans take a lot of work, and that cities, perhaps Phoenix included, have a reputation of enjoying planning and maybe under-delivering on those plans. So we've been asking ourselves very hard in the Heat Office as we've been going on this journey, is it going to be worth it to write a new plan? Is this investment, including the investment of your time right now, is it worth it? And we think we've convinced ourselves yes. We've convinced ourselves yes because I don't want to say we're flying blind right now, but we don't have strong language on the books today that is relevant to the contemporary city and our current priorities that can inform how we are developing and implementing programs related to tree and shade. We need to modernize our policy platform for tree and shade efforts. This also affects us on a day-to-day basis. We're really lucky that to work in a office where we're focused on popular topics like trees and shade. We get a lot of emails with ideas for different projects and so forth. But while I think we have reasonable judgment, Laura and I, about how to prioritize, we don't have a policy guidance go-to that helps us understand which are the most important projects first. So our day-to-day operations could improve. We're hopeful that a new plan would catalyze work from the Sierra Club and other partners out there as a point of motivation for our collective work. We think it'll make us more competitive for external funding. And we do think that there is a unmet responsibility to publicly explain what our journey has been for the last 14 years as a city on these topics and how we're going to continue to tell that narrative moving forward. And we hope to accomplish all of those with the new Shade Phoenix plan. You might have been surprised by the name you heard Sandy reveal, the Shade Phoenix plan, different, a pivot from the Tree and Shade Master Plan. And we're really excited to lean into shade as the focus. And we're excited to lean into shade because of the science around how important shade is for the human body. This is a cartoon from the city's Let's Talk Heat pamphlet that you can find online at letstalkheat.org. And when we talk about heat in the city, different people use different types of measurements. Of course, if we're watching the weather broadcast this evening or the news broadcast and we hear the weather forecast, there's some discussion of air temperature. Sometimes, ourselves or we might see researchers out making measurements of the temperature of surfaces. And you can see the contrast there in the sun and the shade. But what our bodies feel, what we are responsive to, is this top number, the radiant temperature, a concept that I think we're all becoming more conversant about as a community, as a country, and certainly as residents of the hottest big city in the country. And shade, whether it's from natural sources or built sources, makes a tremendous impact on how we feel. One way to think about it is being in the shade in July is like being in the sun in April or May. I mean, it changes the season that our body is experiencing. So we think scientifically and physiologically, shade is worth our focus. And the research community is telling us this as well. These are some headlines and quotes from articles in really high impact journals, including the #1 journal, Nature. This was a commentary published last year that shade is an essential solution for hotter cities. And the authors of that article make the case that we just haven't oriented our conversation around shade enough. We vaguely talk about cooling, but when it comes to keeping the inhabitants of the city safe, maybe shade is the direction we need to go. And it is a concept that, as you can see in another headline on the slide here, has been largely absent from municipal heat plants. So we're leaning into shade, and we think that's responsive to what the community has been telling the city for many, many years as well. We think there's no greater source of expertise about how to move forward on these topics than from the residents of the hottest large city in the country. And they tell us time and time again in different forums, we might hear it tonight as well, how important shade is. Here's some of the places where we've been learning, some of the audiences, some of the wisdom we've been learning as we've been crafting the shade plan, including some of the city's formal public advisory boards and commissions, some partnerships with other departments, an online questionnaire that some of you may have taken and is still open if you haven't, phoenix.gov/heat, on a variety of community workshops. And again, all building upon, I would argue, more than a decade of public comment, of op-eds, of advocacy work from different organizations that we are also hopeful to capture the spirit of in the plan as well. From this questionnaire, I think we've heard an echo for this theme that we need more shade in the community that's been out there for a long time. Respondents to the questionnaire, who are from all over the city of Phoenix, are the response pool is reasonably but not perfectly representative, I would say, of the city. People who responded to this survey say there's emphatically not enough built shade or trees in Phoenix. 60%, nearly 60% of respondents characterize our situation with trees as a severe lack of them, and 40%, nearly 40%, use the same language when talking about built shade. So clearly work to do ahead to provide more shade in the city. Beyond our public engagement, we've also had really good conversations with our colleagues here at the City of Phoenix. A lot of different departments are involved in one form or another. In fact, we have 12 different departments that are responsible for managing some trees in the city, and they all don't have the same exact approach, which has been very interesting to learn about. We've heard a bunch of other issues and challenges and ideas for moving forward. Contract management has been a big concern. The general funding landscape for tree replacement or new trees, how to handle unplanned costs. I don't know about your neighborhoods, but certainly in mine and other neighborhoods across the city, we've seen some tree loss from some of these very isolated but severe storms that have happened in recent weeks. And sometimes those might hit parts of the city or city properties in particular where there's not a good contingency fund right now to replace those. We hear a lot about workforce, whether it's city jobs or jobs in the community. In fact, I think Laura and I would argue that we see across the entire life cycle of trees in the city, everything from planting the seed to moving the sapling from the tiny pot to the slightly less tiny pot, all the way to the need to care for a very mature tree or perhaps take a tree down that's at the end of its life. There's need to expand and improve the entirety of that workforce. Our colleagues say that we need to definitely be giving more attention to built shade, especially in places where trees don't work. And what I would say is one of the most popular questions we get, and maybe you'll have it as well. How are we talking about trees and water together? It seems like those conversations pull us in opposite directions. So we were trying to learn a lot from our colleagues at the city, trying to learn a lot from the public experts on heat. And we're trying to learn a lot from the analytical tools that are out there as well in crafting this new plan. Here's just one example of some data we're using. These are publicly available data from Google's Environmental Insights Explorer. They have a really nice interface. We've been using their data, which we interpret as the best and most recent available picture of tree canopy in Phoenix. As of the most recent version of their data, the middle of the road place in the city has about 11% tree canopy right now. That's about where we were at the time the 2010 plan was written, which had a very ambitious goal to double tree canopy at the time. There's a little bit of an apples and oranges problem in how those measurements are made. So 11% today is not measured the same way that 11% was measured then. But no matter what the details are there, it is clear we have not moved forward by the leaps and bounds that the 2010 plan envisioned. Beyond that story, I think the main story here is about the distribution and the variability of trees. The map here shows tree canopy by census tract, rough proxy for neighborhoods. Yellow areas have few trees, dark green areas have many trees. For those who are familiar with this topic and follow the news, this is not a surprise, but what a contrast there. More than a tenfold difference between the neighborhoods that have the most and neighborhoods that have the fewest. And that contradicts the pledge the mayor made a few years ago about where we want to be. We want to be in a place where all neighborhoods have access to the benefits of trees. We are, in fact, the first city to sign this tree equity pledge with American Forests, another large nonprofit organization. We're thinking not just about community-wide trees, but also what's happening on city property. We're really working hard with departments to get a good accounting of how many trees have been planted over the past decade and a half and how many have been removed. We're paying close attention to that because that's the places that the city has the most control over, and it's where we can and should lead by example. But as we do that work, we also recognize that we can't be only focused on our city property. When we remove the mountain preserves from the story, City of Phoenix land, and we remove the roads themselves, City of Phoenix land counts for less than 8% of the total land area of the big City of Phoenix. So we need to move forward on city properties, but to make meaningful progress on those broad community-wide numbers, attention to private and other types of property are going to be super important as well. And then just lastly, to give a brief teaser here, we're trying to use some new data from our partners at UCLA and ASU about where shade is in the city, not just trees. This is an overhead view of some buildings near downtown Phoenix, including City Hall, where Laura and I are sitting right now. The pink shapes are the buildings. The black is where shadows are cast. On the left-hand side, where shadows are cast in early summer at noon, and on the right at 6 p.m. on the same early summer day. It shouldn't be any surprise. There's a lot more shade when the sun is low at 6 p.m. than at noon. But now we're asking questions like, so how much shade is there in total on sidewalk areas in the city of Phoenix? And how does that compare to goals that have been established by some of our transportation partners at the Maricopa Association of Governments? Here are their guidelines for pedestrian shade. You can see a minimum good and an excellent target. And we're trying to understand how we are situated as a city right now relative to those guidelines. I will pause there, catch my breath, see if we have any questions about what we've heard from the community, what we're looking at in terms of these data resources that we're so excited about before we transition to talk about the plan looking forward. What are the actions? What are the values? But let's pause there and see if we have some feedback, some questions, etc.
I have a quick question.
Please,
Oh,
please.
wait, Chris's hand's up. Chris, go ahead.
Or Mr. Gelker, you might be muted.
Yeah, you have to unmute, Chris.
I don't know if North was at the top, not at the top or what, but it looked like that last graph was backwards. In the morning, the shade should be west of the buildings and the shade looked like it was east of the buildings.
Oh, so I might have misspoken. That was 6 p.m. shade. Sorry, 6 p.m. Good eyes there, but yes,
Okay.
shade casts from west to east. Absolutely.
Oh, I just had a quick question. So do you think it's mostly apples to oranges? Why? I mean, it just seems like there hasn't been very much progress on the tree goals. So, or are you going to get into that a little bit more? But I just
Yeah,
am curious.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, I don't have any more slides on that. No, I mean, I don't think. I think you're right that if I sense where you're going, it is hard for us to find evidence of major community-wide progress since 2010. I don't think it's in the details of the analysis that big progress is hidden or lost. There certainly have been some successes. There have been some featured projects, whether they be on public or private property. But I think if we were to replicate the methods used in 2010 today, we'd find ourselves in in the ballpark of where they were. And that's unfortunate, right? That I don't
Yeah.
think anybody is happy that that is the situation. I think we've got some exciting commitments made here that we're going to share in just a moment. They're going to change that change that situation, but we also want to be as clear as possible in explaining how these data points can be compared to each other and how we can tell a more consistent story over time so we can all talk together about, okay, where are we this year compared to last year? That's been really hard to do in the past.
There are a couple questions in the chat. What is your goal time frame to publish this document?
Thank you for that question. So the draft document is available online right now. We welcome you to dive in phoenix.gov/heat. There's a button near the top of the admittedly minimalistic webpage right now, but you should be able to find that button that has the draft plan. And we're on track to present the final plan to City Council at the very end of October. So we do have a good 2-month window here for continued improvement. And certainly the hopefully approval of the plan at the end of October doesn't mean that our conversation about continuous improvement ends.
And then the next question is, how can community members help you?
Yeah, thanks for that question as well. I think we love your feedback on the document. I think first and foremost that mechanically is why we're here today. What actions are missing? What actions don't we care for? What values are misaligned with yours? What questions do you have about a confusing part of the analysis? Where is there a period missing at the end of a sentence? Right, all feedback, big and small, would be welcome. We'll be doing the editorial work, we'll be doing the graphic design work on our side, but yeah, what are the concepts that we're missing? What types of actions don't you see represented? That would be really helpful. We'd of course welcome public comment at that meeting. We're on track for the October 30th City Council meeting. It's not set in stone yet, but that's where we're headed. And I think between now and then, we'd also love to learn about other groups we can speak with, especially those you think might not be on our radar, and especially in parts of the city where tree and shade are particularly lacking. Hopefully those are some ideas.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions. So.
All right, well, we will resume the show. Okay, so now to look forward a bit, what is in the plan? We have tried to craft a plan based around this vision statement and values that we've heard from the community and from our colleagues at the city as well. You can see the vision statement here that speaks to all residents and visitors experiencing benefits of trees and built shade. And the 6 values that we've built the plan around are to focus on people. And I recognize for a broadly focused environmental organization, there's a little tension here that we might be introducing. This is a plan about shading people and the infrastructure that support those people as they move throughout the city. This is not a habitat plan. This is not a beautification plan. This is not a water management plan, although those are important topics and there are important intersections, but we've tried to orient people first in the plan, which we think has been missing from the general conversation around heat that I alluded to in the past. We want to try to start talking about shade the same way we talk about water and electricity. This is a critical infrastructure that people depend on. In our community questionnaire, more than 1,000 people said that shade is absolutely essential for them in their daily life as they move throughout the city. We want to carry that momentum into this document and then into city policy and program work as well. We don't want to, we're fearful about language that we hear that the shade is a luxury amenity that we just kind of erased out of our plan at the very end of the process. We don't think that's how we'd talk about water and power to a building. Let's not talk about shade in that way either. Echoing the mayor's tree equity pledge, leading with a focus on environmental justice and equity, prioritizing low tree and shade communities first, and those where there's room for improvement in the relationship between the city and the community. Respecting the desert landscape and the cultural heritage of the region. This might play out with respect to tree species selection and other topics. Collaboration. This is a plan that will guide city operations, but we hope will guide a lot of other collaborative work as well. We know the goals in this plan cannot be achieved by the city alone. And the plan is proposing a value to shake things up a little bit. Recognizing that the trajectory we've been on is not taking us to where we want to go, so that we need to try some different approaches. The plan has 37 different actions that are divided into 4 broad chapters. And you can see those chapters here on the slide. The proposed actions collectively represent a total investment of more than $50 million that will be made over the next 5 years. And this is arguably the biggest difference between the 2010 plan, which we respect as the hard work of a lot of talented people at the time. I think it's fair to say that we've yet to fully realize the vision of that plan. And we're optimistic that the new plan will push us forward in a different way. The biggest contrast between the 2 plans as I see it, this plan has a funding commitment behind it. 2010 was a really hard time for all cities to be making big financial commitments to anything. And as we read the city council minutes from when the 2010 plan was passed, city staff are charged at the time to begin implementation of the plan contingent upon available funding, of which there was very little at that time. In fact, if anything, people were trying to preserve the budgets they had. Well, there's no contingency upon available funding for the actions that are in this plan. There is a commitment to do this work that our city council has been making in recent years, and will reaffirm when this plan is finalized. As best we can do the math, we think the money will be distributed in these ways, although there's this imperfect exercise. 17 million for new trees, 18 million for new built shade, 15 million for maintenance of the above and what exists right now, and at least $2 million of investment in workforce and related programming. And this money is coming from a variety of sources, including the city's general fund and capital improvement program, including grants and American Rescue Plan Act allocation. That's a large allocation there, and that's not sustained funding moving forward. And we are very conscious about that and thinking about what next beyond the 5-year time horizon of this plan, and a nearly $8 million commitment that voters made in the general obligation bond. I wanted to share a few actions in the plan. We certainly don't have time together to talk about all 37, but wanted to share a few actions. And we're going to highlight the work of some of the departments that really are the big players in this space. Every department has an important role in the shade plan, but some are clearly closer to the core of this document and this plan than others. And that includes our friends in the Parks and Recreation department. A lot of the trees that are on city property have been planted by parks, are maintained by parks, are reviewed by parks. They're just such a central part of this plan, and a lot of the trees that people enjoy in the city are at parks. So there's an action in the plan related to continued tree planting at parks, building upon more than 15,000 trees that have been planted at city parks in the past 10 years. The Parks and Recreation Department is also responsible. This might be a surprise to some. They're responsible for tree maintenance citywide on public property. The city has more than 100,000 trees in its inventory, and the Parks Department is responsible for the maintenance of quite a large share of those trees. So continuing that maintenance work and investing to improve it in the necessary labor, technology, resources, part of the plan as well. And then there are a number of different ways that we're working with the Parks Department to improve the workforce, including creating more opportunities for certified arborist training for city staff and for community members. There's a very creative partnership that our Parks and Recreation Department has with the Arizona Community Tree Council that helps provide this training. Our street transportation department is a really key player as well. While the Parks Department is maintaining large trees on the streetscape, the Street Transportation Department is responsible for landscape maintenance more generally. I can't comprehend what this number means, but I know it's a big number. 30 million square feet of inventory throughout the city that they are responsible for maintaining. And I hope you can see it on the picture above that number 30 million. There are some tiny green slivers that are superimposed on the map. Those green slivers are what we call the landscape maintenance areas of the city. That's what the city is responsible for, interpreted as the public property. And what I hope you can see on that figure is that it's not a continuous green stripe on both sides of the street, but it's in fact quite a complex landscape for who is responsible for what along our streetscape. We are working to ensure that where the city is in charge, that is setting a good example. We know there's a lot of work to do there, but we also acknowledge again that there's a lot of private partner work that's going to be needed as well to improve the streetscapes that the public certainly has a lot of perspective on. The street department holds the budget for some important focused programs, including the Cool Corridor program, which is striving to build more continuous shaded walkways for the residents of Phoenix. Thus far, they've planted almost 3,000 trees with that funding. They also have a separate funding pool for replacement of street trees. And then we're really excited to be working with streets on our built shade structure program. This is with American Rescue Plan Act grant funding. In this first generation, first iteration of the shade structure program, we're focusing on intersections and crosswalks because that's where the community says that they're hot quite a lot. These are hot places in the city and places where people are hot. And these are often places where it's really hard to grow a tree because of above and below ground infrastructure that exists there, as well as visibility concerns for the traveling public. So we'll be next year constructing about 20 new shade structures at intersections that include local art as part of the design. And then a few additional actions here. Just wanted to briefly highlight the work of our friends in public transit who continue to add shade at our city bus stops. Again, another number I have a hard time wrapping my head around, more than 4,000 bus stops in the city. And about 3,000 of them have shade furniture today. Public transit is going to continue to add at least 80 new shade structures per year. And they tell us that by the end of this decade, there's going to be shade at every bus stop in the city where it is feasible to do so from an engineering and safety standpoint. We've got some exciting projects in the work with our friends in the Office of Arts and Culture, including the Sombra project that will have temporary shade installations installed at city parks next year. We're working with the artists right now on those concepts. It's really, really fun. And then we'll tell you a little bit more about these in a moment. Our tree and shade grant programs that are going to be adding 10,000 trees in neighborhoods and at schools. We're already on track to add 47 shade structures at schools as part of our grant program thus far. Really exciting work there. And finally, to tie into this idea of workforce, we'll be hiring and training community members to be paid tree stewards to support some of the neighborhood tree planting through the grant opportunities that are supporting the plan. So what are we doing right now? What have we been doing this summer? We're developing more specific benchmarks for each of the actions that you'll read about in the plan. That's been a good conversation with our colleagues in different departments. We're developing goals, shade targets for different types of sites in the city. You saw those targets from MAG before about walkways, but we think there should be a shade goal for every square inch of the city. In some cases, it shade might not be appropriate, but we've had some really good conversation there. Our friends in the Budget and Research Department are helping us think about the math behind tree maintenance and landscape maintenance moving forward. Continue dialogue, including today's meeting. Of course, working with our council offices, and then late October, the final plan coming to City Council. I'll wrap up the comments on the shade plan just by giving a couple of highlights of our first conversation with City Council at the June 11th policy session. Our takeaways, maybe we're biased in how we heard it, but we thought we heard a very positive and supportive message from our City Council about where this work is headed. We heard loud and clear from them that we need to improve tree maintenance across the city. We need to break down those barriers between those 12 different departments that are trying to maintain trees on public property. The comment on the theme of equity was really championed in the comments made by our City Council members. They liked what they heard about how we've been trying to work with the community to craft this plan collaboratively, as well as working with other city departments. But they I think also reflect back on where we've been over the past 15 years and want to see more assurances that there's a sustainable plan in place to continue this work moving forward. And I think that the funding commitment that's already been made will be a big part of that. I have 4 other slides about our tree and shade grant programs, but I think this would be another good time to pause and have some conversation about the plan itself. So I'll turn off the screen and look forward to your comments.
You have a question in the chat.
Thank
I think
you.
there are a couple of questions in there, actually. There's one that came in at the very end of your last section of the presentation, and and that was from Mark. What are you doing to reduce surface area of concrete contributing to radiant heat? And encouraging roofs to grow trees and plants and reducing concrete surface area.
Yeah, Mark, it's a good multifaceted question there. Laura, please jump in if you've got some thoughts. In general, I'd say Laura and I are pretty comfortable with the way that our development processes happen right now for new construction. In that there are, especially in the downtown area, there are some pretty aggressive shade goals associated with new construction. We probably do need to think about some more explicit language on existing construction right now. Yeah, there's not, like, we hear initiatives in other cities. Sometimes it's called the depaving movement, or there are other terms like that. We don't have language like that in the plan right now. We haven't had a lot of conversations about that. I think, we certainly have had conversations about parking spaces and how often parking spaces are used. I think that's a good intersection topics, but I guess, yeah, more to think about there on the surface area. Obviously a really important topic there. We have not, if you're aware of it, please bring it to us. We haven't seen a lot of really encouraging case studies or research about rooftop vegetation in arid cities. We are thinking, and it's not in this document, which is about shade, but we are thinking more so about roof reflectivity than about rooftop vegetation. I think shaded areas on roofs that are used for other activities, we could think about as well. But if you all are aware of case studies and path forward, obviously that is a lot of land area. As I look out here, there's a lot of roof area. So yeah, I think that covers the questions there. Laura, anything, any other perspective there? I don't feel like I had a great
No.
answer to either question.
I think this goes back to what you say for, sorry. 1 second.
We
That,
gotcha. Yeah.
yeah, that this is a shade plan. It's not a heat reduction plan for our city. And if you think that we need one of those, we would love to hear that you think that we need a heat reduction plan for our city, because this has always been a tree plan, and just this step to take to it in also talk about built shade is actually more than what they asked us to do also. So I wish that we had a heat reduction plan for our city, but we don't have that right now. So that's just my.
And that could certainly be a standalone document, or maybe a component of the next iteration of the climate action plan. That might be a planning venue to play out some of these topics. I'll hit one more in the chat, then Mr. Gelker, I see your hand. How we get private businesses involved. We have certainly been in a lot of conversation with neighborhood services about enforcement of landscape plans and tree requirements for private property. We're thinking about carrots and sticks. I'll share with this group, but there are undoubtedly many private properties that are not in compliance with their landscape plans on file with the city, and the city should act and can act, and we are working with our colleagues in neighborhood services to build out and improve that process. Sabrina, if you have not taken the questionnaire, I think the specific anecdote you mentioned there about choosing one business over another because shade is a quote that I would love to showcase in our presentation on October 30th. I think this has not been an important part enough of the narrative that there is an economic consequence to having shade or not having shade. And I think hearing directly from residents that people are making decisions about where there's shade that affect business transactions is really really important. We've got some other some exploratory analysis on that front. We might have more to share about in the future. Dahlia, thanks for your question on the guidelines of trees, canopy, water, etc. We continue to uncover this treasure trove of resources about tree care, tree watering, tree maintenance. And Laura, I'm thinking we probably need to quadruple check that they are all linked and referenced in the draft document. I fear that they are not. We certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel where there are good guidelines that have been produced, whether it's from the Botanical Garden, from the Maricopa County Extension, from the U of A. But yeah, that technical guidance is really important, and we should work with the shade plan to make it super accessible. Mr. Gelker, let's hit your question, please.
Hey, this is really quick. When you were talking about collaborating with artists, you showed a nice middle sculpture with shade, and you said it was a temporary installation. Why is it temporary? Why can't it just stay there?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Gelker. Yeah, sorry, I in my rush to get through the slides, I conflated two different initiatives. So the there is one project that is installing permanent shade structures at intersections, and you know, they are subject to the full engineering and safety assessment to ensure that the hard infrastructure is going to work in the very dynamic landscape of an intersection. So absolutely, permanent is coming, whether it's these shade structures for people waiting at an intersection or more from public transit. We are also very excited about this temporary shade project through the Office of Arts and Culture, which is going to give the city and artists a chance to experiment with some technologies, some way that art has been integrated, some design concepts and shapes and colors that maybe haven't been part of the conversation thus far. You know, I think there is still a lot of learning to do for how to make shade infrastructure work really well in the city, and I've actually been surprised how fun and free the conversation has been, because there's this creative innovation component associated with the temporary nature of the project. Yeah, let's try that. It's not going to be there forever, but let's see how X material holds up in the summer heat. Let's see how a motion sensor activated something or another. I don't want to spill all the beans and take the thunder from the artist, but let's see how that might work in this context. And then what can we institutionalize? So yeah, trying to do both. The question about AM and PM shading. Yes. And yeah, this is we have for the shade structure program at intersections, we have had an explicit shade analysis to try to maximize shade coverage over the areas where people are waiting at intersections at the right times of the day. And of course, the geometry of each intersection and where the sun is, create better and fewer opportunities. I think the question here about AM and PM shading, really makes Laura and I and the whole team think upstream about how early in the process we need to be thinking about shade when we're constructing a new streetscape or whatever it might be, so we don't get cornered at the end of the process like we are in so many places of the city where there's just not the right orientation or space possible to put the shade where people need it. I think this is where we have big dreams for the Cool Corridor project, where we can make a focused investment to do some reconfiguration of the streetscape to get ourselves out of some of these situations where we're stuck and just can't get shade in the right place. So we are thinking about it. We appreciate that it's a really tough conversation in terms of the existing infrastructure of the city, but please know that we are just as frustrated as, well, I don't want to say we're just as frustrated as you, because I don't know how frustrated you are, but we are very frustrated as we move through the city and see people trying to steal shade from the lamppost because the shade structure is not casting the shadow in the right place.
I think you're caught up.
Okay, well, just a few more slides to go here. Okay. This is a little bit of telling, sharing with you what we're doing, but also a bit of an invitation to participate, or maybe inspire others you know to participate. We've been blessed with resources from our city council to execute on 4 different programs funded by the American Rescue Plan Act. One of the lessons learned from COVID is how important it is to have a healthy home and a healthy neighborhood and healthy places to be outside. And for us, shade is part of what it means to have those healthy places. And thus, we're using American Rescue Plan Act to make spaces healthier in the community. Uh, we talked a little bit about right-of-way shade structures already, so I won't get into that one too much. We also have a $1.5 million grant program that's building shade structures at schools. I'm pretty confident there is a shade structure being built at a school right now as we sit here today, as a result of that program. And I don't know, it's every 4 or 5 days a new picture goes up on our wall with one that's been built. And then 2 tree-focused programs, Canopy for Kids. This is a school-focused program, and other types of institutions that serve children can apply as well. And then a neighborhood program called Community Canopy. Canopy for Kids planted about 200 trees at schools in Phoenix in the spring. We'll do at least that much, I think much more than that this fall, serving 7 schools. You can see some of the other metrics there. We think this is a transformative project for so many different reasons. Of course, the shade is good and the beautification is good, but the learning opportunities, and we've got some great partners in the community who are helping us implement this project. And this has gone so well that we're going to continue it with additional funding that the city's received with thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. The application window for the current funding cycle has closed, but we will reopen soon with Inflation Reduction Act funding. And Laura, correct me if I'm not thinking about that correctly at this moment. So all to say, if there's a school or youth serving a center of some kind in a part of the city that doesn't have a lot of trees and shade right now, or is otherwise a disadvantaged community as designated by the federal government, let us know about it. Encourage them to get in contact with us. We will get the conversation started and get an application in the pipeline when the time is right. The neighborhood program called Community Canopy remains open right now. You can visit our website, phoenix.gov/heat, and apply. I think we got one more cycle that's just about to close, although this also will continue with Inflation Reduction Act money. And here, for the first time that we're aware of, the city's planting a lot of trees on individual residential property. You can see hundreds and hundreds of trees, serving in some cases 1 resident at a time. What we're really excited about with this grant program is we've seen neighborhood coalitions come together. Sometimes existing neighborhood organizations have applied, and in some cases, neighbors are meeting neighbors to put together grants and participate in tree planting as a result of this program. We think that's so exciting for building community resilience and interest on tree and shade topics. This program, like the others, is focused on areas of the city that are federally designated as disadvantaged and have low tree and shade areas. So even if you don't live in one of those areas, I bet you know somebody who does, or I bet you know an organization that works there, or I bet you can help inspire some conversation there. We are eager to get this money turned into trees in the community. We're trying to make the process as easy as possible to work with the city. And Laura and our other teammate, Kayla Kaloran, have just heroically built processes in City Hall in a short amount of time to do things that the city's never done before, that make it possible for an individual to interact with a large institution on what can be a surprisingly sort of complex legal matter and so forth. But I'm so thankful for how they've made this possible. I think, Laura, the official grant terms and conditions, it's less than a 600-page document that individuals have to review right now. So we've made good progress there. Tongue in cheek, it's a much shorter document than that. And then, yeah, just a couple of pictures of the shade structures going up at schools and other youth-focused centers. We've also used some money to repair existing ones that are out there. Such a difference these make. Laura's heard this story a few times, but our 2.5-year-old was out at a park in Phoenix on a beautiful April morning. I think I was even wearing a light jacket. Touched the slide at 9 o'clock in the morning and said, "Too hot." Right, and that's how we think about so much infrastructure of the city. If we're saying it's too hot in early April in the morning, obviously we'll have some challenges in the summer. Shade can solve so much of that problem. And then we talked a little about the right-of-way program. I won't belabor those details. But we welcome questions and engagement on these and your ideas for more programs like these to help make places in the city safer for everyone. And with that, Sandy, thank you again for the invitation to be here. Even if there aren't more ideas right now, our email boxes are open, the questionnaire is open. We welcome your input. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I think we don't really have too much time for questions because I actually have to be on something else at 7 or close there too. But people have your contact information and I can send it out again to folks. And then, of course, the link where they can comment on the plan as well. But yeah, thanks. Lots of really good information. I was gonna comment, but I'm like, I'm gonna wait until after the presentation. So I will go and do that now that I know a little bit more about the plan and everything. So yeah, thanks so much. And we will I'll be in touch because there are a couple of entities I think that might benefit from.
That would be so appreciated. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Will do. All right.
Great.
Oh, everyone was supposed to use their reaction with their hands, like yeah.
Yeah, quite unnecessary, but thank you. And yeah, we hope everybody stays cool and stays safe. And we look forward to enjoying more shade in the future with you all.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks so much. Good night.